Welcome to This Week in Hastings Headline History, where we take a look back at what was making news in Hastings, Florida over a century ago. These are stories directly out of the pages of the Hastings Herald, which was published weekly in the early 1900s. So sit back and enjoy as I share with you a few of the stories from the August 22nd, 1919 edition. Big bridge over East Coast Canal gives way. There is trouble ahead for autoists making the trip down the Florida East Coast section of the Dixie Highway. The bridge across the East Coast Canal just below Knox and Bede, Orange Grove, is down and out and will have to be entirely rebuilt. This means that the route will be impassable for at least 3 months. The Morning Journal, in describing the accident to the bridge, says, quote, "The bridge that spanned the creek went down with a heavy Indiana truck loaded with cement. Since the railway strike, trucks have been brought into use more than ever, and this truck, with W.C. Thomas driving, was on the way from Jacksonville to Miami with 40 sacks of cement. The driver was making a test trip and was curious about the bridge, examining it carefully before going across. After he was on the bridge, he became afraid that it was unsafe and attempted to back off, then went forward again. When near the middle of the structure, the entire thing gave way and dropped into the canal. The driver of the truck remained at the wheel until it struck the bottom. He then cut his way out through the side curtains and swam to shore." Shelling ruts on new route down the East Coast. Motorists who use the East Coast section of the Dixie Highway will be glad to know that the new route leading into Ormond from the Knox and Bede Grove is now in use, and paving material is being placed in the ruts so as to enable traffic to get through the unpaved 3-mile stretch with the least amount of trouble. Hastings represented at Florida Farm Meeting. The annual state convention of the Florida Division of the Farmers Education and Cooperative Union of America was successfully held in Gainesville. A representative delegation was present from over the state, and much business transacted. At this annual convention, great stress was put on the importance of having the farmers of Florida support the movement for the erection of a $1 million temple for the farmers in Washington. This edifice has been ordered by the National Board of Farms organization, and the state of Florida is assessed $5,000 as its portion toward the building. It was decided that a campaign should be started in the state to raise this amount. Pleased with golf links. Many friends were glad to greet R.C. Matthews on his arrival the latter part of last week from New London, Connecticut, where he was engaged in submarine construction work during the war. Mr. Matthews will be remembered as having charge of the construction of the St. Augustine links more than 2 years ago. He therefore was very interested in a critical inspection of the links at this time. To a representative of this newspaper, he expressed great satisfaction over their condition. He says that they are in tip-top shape and will offer the very best kind of playing next season. He predicts that St. Augustine is destined to become the mecca of golfers in the country. Hog cholera bad. Hog cholera is again ravaging the uninoculated droves of swines in this county, and the swine growers have suffered heavy losses during the past 2 or 3 weeks. While the disease is practically incurable, prevention is simple and inexpensive, as the cholera serum injected into healthy swine render them immune to the disease. Occupation tax ordinance passed on Tuesday. For more than 2 hours, city commissioners reviewed and amended the occupation license tax ordinance Tuesday afternoon at their regular weekly meeting, passing it on its 3rd and final reading. This ordinance is a very important one and covers many sheets of paper, being one of the longest passed in several years. It repeals the old occupation license tax ordinance, which had been enforced for the past 10 years and had become obsolete and out of tune with the age. Numerous changes were made in compiling the new ordinance, one of them being the elimination of the tax on each class of merchandise carried by the stores. Under the new ordinance, the merchants will simply pay a license tax on stock, the amount to be governed by the value of the stock. The ordinance embraces all professions and occupations, but the employee working for salary of wages is not included in those liable for the tax. The heaviest tax is imposed on divine healers, the ordinance providing for a tax of $1,000. Fortune tellers and similar occupations must pay a tax of $100. Fruit dealers who bring in shipment and sell from the car must pay a heavy daily tax. This protects the local merchants who have regular places of business and contribute to the support of the city. Bond election is called for September 30th. The St. Johns County Commissioners adopted a resolution calling an election for Tuesday, September 30th, to decide whether or not 5.5% bonds in the sum of $600,000 shall be issued on October 15th for the purpose of constructing permanent, hard-surfaced highways and for the funding of outstanding indebtedness of the county other than bonded indebtedness, and for the acquiring or building of bridges across the Matanzas and North Rivers. New attorney to locate here. Word has been received that a new attorney will soon have his office in Hastings and will be ready for business shortly. Mr. Marr is a graduate of Stetson University and comes here highly recommended. We are glad that Mr. Marr has chosen Hastings as his starting place, and we hope he will make a success. New machines. The machinery for the Key and Clifford Lumber Company has begun to arrive. The lumber camp will probably be in operation in the next few weeks, which will call for a number of hands to be employed. The platform for the sawmill has recently been installed, which seems to be strong enough to hold the largest of the Florida timber. It is hoped the mill will soon be in operation. Coke-obsessed pony update. Weeks ago, I read you the story of Harry Humphreys and his coke-consuming pony. The pony was, it is assumed, addicted to the cocaine that was still an ingredient in Coca-Cola in some bottling companies at the time. The article told that Mr. Humphreys had to give the little colt a bottle of Coke from the Palatka Bottling Company in order to get him to settle in for the night. Since that edition, I have been asked, whatever happened to the pony? Well, this week's edition of the paper shows an ad where Mr. Humphreys is still trying to sell that little black Shetland pony, so we can assume the pony is still getting his nightly nip of soda from Stanley's drink stand. From the editorial section. Deep Creek Bridge. It seems that it is about time something be done with the Deep Creek Bridge, which is in a condition that is almost impassable. The supports of the bridge are sinking in the creek to the extent of 2 or 3 feet, which throws the main level of the floor in a very rough condition. The supports are badly decayed and some of them are hanging loose. The boards in the floor are half nailed, and when cars pass over, the ends of the boards fly up. There have been some accidents in the past that could have been avoided if the bridge had been taken in hand in time. The banisters are merely on the bridge as an ornament and would not be of benefit to anyone that should lose control of his car at that particular place. It is intimated that new bridges will be built in the county, but nothing has been said about the bridge that is so greatly needed. If there is a place in St. Johns County that needs attention, it is that over Deep Creek, and something will have to be done in the near future. The Hastings Herald had more than stories you would find in modern newspapers. Also, local notices that were more of a social report, a way to know what was going on in town and in the personal lives of its residents. Here are a few from this edition. Home after vacation. Arthur Stevens and family returned from the beach this week. He says he is glad to get back to Old Hastings. Returned from school. Miss Faye McCullough returned from summer school at Gainesville, where she has spent a most successful term. She has accepted a position as assistant principal at Rodman, Florida. Having a delightful summer. The many friends of Miss Stella Smith will be glad to hear that she is having a wonderful time during her visit with relatives and friends in Larchmont, near New York City. Automobile trips are made nearly every day to New York, and Miss Smith and a party had the pleasure of seeing the review of the Second Division, having obtained seats in a window on Fifth Avenue opposite the Victory Arch. Miss Smith is enjoying every moment of her trip. Improving. J.B. Hughes and Company are doing some improvement that will be a credit to the Big Brick store. All the hardware department is being remodeled, including new shelves, display cabinets, showcases, in fact, everything that will add to the appearance of the store. Elmer Yelvington has the contract and is displaying his talent. The next thing, J.R. Slim Knight will be on the job with paintbrush, making everything look fresh and clean. I hope you enjoyed this week's edition of Hastings Headline History. This podcast was brought to you by Presenting the Past, bringing history back to the present through historic presentations and the sale of treasures from days gone by. This episode was written and produced by me, Michelle Murillo, with the aid of vintage copies of the Hastings Herald. And to wrap up this week in Hastings headline history, how about a tune from the time? A 1919 hit, John Steele with A Pretty Girl is Like a Melody.
I have an ear for music, and I have an eye for a maid. I link a pretty girlie with each pretty tune that's played. They go together like sunny weather, 'cause with the month of May I've studied girls and music, so I'm qualified to say a pretty girl is like a melody that haunts you night and day, just like the strain of a haunting refrain. She'll start upon a marathon and run around your brain. You can't escape. She's in your memory by morning, night, and noon. She will leave you and then come back again. A pretty girl is just like a pretty tune. A pretty girl is like a melody that haunts you night and day, just like the strain of a haunting refrain. She'll start upon a marathon and run around your brain. You